Welcome, I'm Paul Durant, an analyst programmer based in Bristol, and today I'm going to give a little presentation that aims to give an introduction to both Agile and Scrum as a means of delivering change within Unum. Now, as you see, I've been slightly influenced by a TV program I've seen recently, therefore the title here, Agent of Change. Now, whereas Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. aim to save the world, I'm afraid Agents of Change are more limited in their aspirations, simply aiming to change and save the company time, money and hopefully projects. Now, change is an acronym because I was asked, a few days ago so what do actually Agile and Scrum stand for? I guess they were thinking, is Agile an acronym that has some kind of deep and purposeful meaning? Unfortunately, no, it doesn't. Agile is simply a word. Agile is nifty, flexible, open to change. And Scrum is a term that has been used by a methodology team to encapsulate their concept about what they want to achieve. So, without further ado, we're going to move on to explaining both Agile and Scrum. So, what actually is Agile Development? Well, I guess the best way to approach this is to go to the Manifesto for Agile Software Development, which was developed by a bunch of people back in the 90s who felt there had to be better ways of developing software, and they were going to go and do this and then help others do it as well. And through that work, they have 4 key values. They value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation. They value customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and they value responding to change over just following a plan. So, while there's value in the items below, they value the items above more. Note, it says over, not instead. They still value processes, documentation, contracts and plans. It's just that they value more the idea of individuals, working software, collaboration and responding to change. Now the key thing here is to be agile, not do agile. There's no magic bullet. Unfortunately, we can't just wheel out a new process and say, look, we're agile. I'm afraid it's going to need a change in our mindset and how we approach our work. In fact, it could be a change to our entire working culture. There are many different flavours of Agile, and I've listed a few here. More famous ones: Scrum, which we'll cover later, Lean, Kanban, DSDM, which stands for Dynamic Systems Development Method, and XP, which also stands for Extreme Programming. Right, the benefits are the reason we're thinking of using Agile methods. Now, these are the benefits claimed for Agile development. They deliver the right outcomes to time and cost, and are more responsive to changing requirements. This is achieved by increasing productivity, therefore lowering cost, and improving communication with those building and those accepting the solution. So it encourages better client relationships, closer working relationships with more frequent feedback, also improves the development team cohesion. On the other side of the coin is they're going to reduce waste and therefore costs, delivery time to the business of the selected features, defects and therefore risk of project failure. So, benefits for today's challenges. Now, the benefits of the Agile approach there helps address the increased complexity coupled with the changing business needs that is starting to appear in our world. And this is shown in the spectrum of process complexity diagram. Both the software and the business environment are getting ever more complex. Early computer systems dealt with well-understood business problems using a known set of technology. If you refer to the simple quadrant in the lower left side there, where we have technology close to certainty. We know what we need to do, it's well understood. And the requirements are close to agreement. Again, the customer knows exactly what they want and can easily explain to us what is needed. Of course, in the modern world, we've got increasing complexity on both sides. We've got technology getting more and more complex as we have a more interactive world where technology often has to negotiate with not only various customers but also their computer systems as well. And on the requirement side going up, going from well-known or understood requirements to more vague requirements where even the customers may struggle to understand what the business needs to do. So we have in the lower left the simple in the green area, easily catered for by waterfall methodology. We have the complicated, will probably evolved into structured development. And now we're moving into the amber area, or the complex area. This is where Agile comes in. Of course, we could also end up in the anarchy area, or where chaos rules. Hopefully we'll never get there. So we're going to focus on the amber area, and focus on the Agile approach to how we deal with it. Welcome to Scrum. Now, why are we looking at Scrum? The reason for choosing Scrum is that it's one of the most popular Agile methods around. Also, it embodies many of the features common to other Agile methods. And the pace of change is looking at Agile development methods as well, and Scrum is one of them. Now, why the name Scrum? Well, my take, which is not official, is that it's a tight-knit team working for a common goal. And whilst, from the outside, it looks just like a mess of people shoving around, it's actually a well-organised group of people with distinct roles, techniques, and they're focusing on a well-defined objective. Now, Agile is not Scrum. It's simply a framework. It's an iterative and incremental framework for Agile software development. Now, this approach, incremental and iterative, we need to state that incremental delivery allows the benefits to be realised faster, but overall development time is not necessarily decreased. I.e., say there's several iterations to deliver the software product. Well, obviously the first iteration may be an opportunity to deliver benefits to the customer up front, but if the customer really needs all the iteration deliveries, the actual elapsed time for all the deliveries could be the same as the classic waterfall development. And what Scrum will bring, along with the Agile mindset, is the ability to perhaps benefit from the early delivery and potentially saving on other issues which often go wrong in the waterfall method. And we now look at the approach for Scrum. Now, working products are the deliverables. This does not necessarily mean that this change can be put straight into production, but it does mean it's a piece of software or a change to existing software that can be passed outside the team to others as a complete working item. With these iterations, we have continuous delivery. Also, the importance of face-to-face communication. And business involvement is critical. Working closely with the business is a key element of the success of Scrum, so that IT and business work as a team. They're not split into silos. As such, one of the greatest challenges is getting rid of silo thinking in the company. The development team and the business collaborate to prioritise the requirements and agree the time and cost to deliver the software. The scope of the delivery is managed. There's not all the content of the final delivery, it's just the scope of the iteration being worked on. And how do they do all this magic? And finally, the idea is simply to work down a list of prioritised requirements, one at a time, working from the most important to the least important. And we'll cover this more later when we talk about user stories and backlog. Now, how is Agile able to deliver all these benefits? One key factor of this is that the scope is variable. Right, it's very difficult to plan in advance to deliver a set of features to a fixed deadline and cost with a specified level of quality. You can fix some of them, but not all of these project variables. In traditional waterfall methods, they try to do this. They try to fix all of them. In particular, the scope is always fixed, which often means that time and cost have to be varied as things happen during the course of the project lifetime to extend them. And as a result of time and cost being extended or compromises being made, quality sometimes is compromised. This could be a missed test cycle, or maybe peer reviews aren't conducted. Now, Agile understands ideally they'd like to fix all four, but they can't. So what they do, they time box what is done. So, both time and cost are fixed. Also, there's an agreed level of quality that will be delivered. And to cope this, scope can flex. Now ideally, of course, scope would actually be complete. They would have all the items in there that they promised. But if things slip or things go wrong, it is scope, not the other three qualities, that is modified. Now this does not necessarily mean that the scope has to shrink. It does mean that the scope can flex to meet changing user requirements. So as the changes are delivered in the various increments, the feedback from the customer can evolve what actually is needed. This helps the team to focus on what is just good enough to meet the customer needs. Basically the 80-20 rule, to deliver those features that are the most important. Before moving on to the process, here's an introduction to those who will be implementing it, a who's who of the usual and not so usual suspects. Now, Scrum uses the culture of a self-organising or self-directed teams. Now they are self-organising on how they do the delivery, not what they are delivering. The work is defined externally by the business. It's not just their own ideas. The team size is typically about 6 to 12 members, and ideally they should be physically located in the same place, i.e. co-located, to maximise ease of communication and teamwork. Now here is a developer, also called an analyst programmer, and this depiction should not be taken to imply in any way or form that our developers are cowboys. But if they were cowboys, they might find themselves sorely tested should they head down south, which brings us down to the tester, or maybe the Mexican bandits. And then the business analyst, who does much more than simply parrot the user's statements. And now a new role, the product owner. The product owner is how the Scrum team integrates with the business. They are the customer, or maybe customer proxy, and are a key member of the team. Ideally, the customer is part of the development team itself, working closely with them each day, often working side by side with them. If the key customer cannot be part of the development team on a day-to-day basis, then their representative or proxy customer needs to be part of the team. Now the key customer must also have regular feedback provided to them as well, and at absolute minimum at the end of each iterative cycle. Right, the representative, be it the customer or customer proxy, prioritise the requirements, but they do not create them. This is done by the BAs. So the product owner focuses on identifying the features of the product we built. They allocate the relative business value or priority to each of the items, and they have full authority over the features of the system to be built. And finally, there is the Scrum Master, and he's the chap clutching the rugby ball in the corner. So the Scrum Master in action, what they actually do. Well, their role is to control access to the team. I know brain-eating zombies want to steal the team's time, thank you very much. The Scrum Master is a servant leader. Their job is to enable the team to succeed rather than tell them what to do. So they're kind of like a coach or a facilitator, and they lead by example. Their focus is on the people and the team. They are always on the team's side and must maintain integrity with the team. which is why the Scrum Master is a totally separate role from the product owner. Now we bring the people and processes together. The Scrum development team is self-organizing under the guidance of a Scrum Master. All team members are members of professions such as developers, testers, etc. We all work together to achieve the delivery, sometimes helping out in other roles as needed. The importance of face-to-face communication is such that the team is often physically located in one place. Even being located on different floors in the same building has been shown to drastically reduce team effectiveness. As has been said, improbably excellent teams become so through a sustained series of entirely probable small improvements. So in other words, small known steps can take you a long way. The product backlog, or product list, as someone once called it, is composed of user stories. User stories are value-driven features that have to be delivered, and they are value-driven by focusing on the problem. They're similar to requirements, but they focus on the issue to be resolved, not on any potential solutions. And the product backlog is composed of a number of these user stories. They can be thought of as a huge wish list, maybe a big pile of wishes. Now this huge pile, the product backlog, is obviously much too large to be dealt with in a single iteration. So at the start of a sprint, the sprint planning meeting comes together and the product owner and the development team meet and examine this product backlog. They plan for the next sprint by selecting the contents of the sprint, i.e. the sprint backlog. Now this sprint backlog is simply a list of tasks taken from the product backlog that must be completed in that sprint or iteration. One of the tools used here is an estimate process for each of the user stories selected, and it's called Planning Poker. This is not to be confused with Texas Hold'em or Stud Poker though. Then we get to the Mickey Mouse part of the diagram, the actual sprint itself. In Scrum, the delivery iterations are called sprints. The solution is normally built in a series of sprints, and each one is about 2 to 4 weeks long. Ideally, they aim for about 2 weeks per sprint. It can go up to 4 weeks, but not beyond that. Empirical evidence has shown that going beyond 4 weeks, actually you start to lose the benefits of this approach. Now the sprint allows for very fast feedback cycles. So, if a wrong turn is taken, we waste less time on that. The idea being, if we fail fast. So we don't go around wasting time on incorrect approaches. And to reiterate, it is a continuous process. It's not a waterfall sprint. i.e., the team are not delivering part of a waterfall process in the sprint. For instance, a design document or part of a software testing cycle. Each sprint delivers working software. So at the start of the sprint, as we mentioned previously, this is where the sprint backlog is selected, and then the team commits to the sprint. In the sprint itself, there are 2 items that stand out. One is the daily meetings, often called stand-up meetings, about 15 minutes long, in which each member stands up and then states what they've achieved since the last meeting, i.e. yesterday, and what they plan to do before the next meeting, i.e. tomorrow. And then they list any obstacles that might be holding them up, at which point the team can come together and help them to resolve these obstacles. Also inspected at this point is the very public burn down chart, and this is updated, showing the remaining work. There'll be more on this later. The team then continues the build of the delivery. Okay, when the sprint finishes, 2 things happen. There's a sprint review where the Scrum team presents the product owner with the product they've built. This is fully working software, a complete solution or potentially deployable increment, sometimes also called a shippable product. This is something they can show to others outside the team. For a much larger project, this could be elements that slot into a mocked-up test environment. Now the reviewer has three choices. They can accept the product, they can request changes, or they can reject it. This is also where the product owner can change the product backlog. Once this is done, the Scrum Master then holds a sprint retrospective with the development team to review the lessons of the last sprint and identify any process improvements. If there is another sprint to be carried out, the next sprint planning meeting now takes place, and if the user had requested changes, those will be fed back into the product backlog for potential inclusion in the next iteration. And then the process starts all over again. Look at delivery now. Working software is deliverable along with support and documentation. As we stated before, this may not be production ready code, but it is a totally completed code that can be passed to others. Quality is value to those who matter. The delivery must meet agreed levels of quality, fully tested code, not a beta release or a prototype. Such quality features could be timely delivery, absence of faults, and of course consistent with the specified needs. We can deliver quality through the evolution of these increments, again benefiting from fast feedback cycles, allowing rapid evolution of the requirements. You need to ensure we build the right thing, for instance a Jeep rather than a two-decker bus. User stories and the presence of the customer within the team helps them to achieve this. Also, the Agile build is an incremental and collaborative approach, so it encourages the team to challenge requirements, asking why. They can discuss examples. They can review the requirements and see how these are being met, then try and break the design to improve it. All this allows the team to define their own success criteria, i.e. the acceptance criteria of the delivery, the level of risk, and to specify and challenge any assumptions. Now this is kind of a very important thing as embodied in this phrase by Peter Drucker. There is surely nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency what should not have been done at all. And of course, building the thing right, i.e. working software, documentation and tests. And documentation of course can be part of the committed code, the release notes or the user guides. Now on to planning. Something Agile does not need planning, and they couldn't be more wrong. It's just a different sort of planning. In Agile, the plan is spread over the lifetime of the development rather than done as a huge upfront task. So in fact, it can have more planning in total than any other methodology. It's just done at a different time. One way of thinking of this is plans are done up front, but planning is continuous. Now you may be wondering with a large cannon in front of you on the slide. Well, with a cannon, before you fire it, you have to carefully plan and calculate where it has to go, and then you fire it. But once fired, of course, then you're committed, and you're totally dependent on the original calculations. On the other hand, with a missile, you can fire it in the rough direction and then guide it into its target during its flight. So one can easily change direction more easily than the other, i.e. so coping with change much more flexibly. Now there are various processes to support Agile and Scrum. We've already mentioned the burn down chart. This is a day-to-day measure of remaining work in the sprint. It's a graphical representation of work left to do measured against the planned rate of change, or velocity of change as it's sometimes called. The vertical axis is the work done, the horizontal axis is time. So it starts at the top left and works down to the bottom right. This allows the team very easily to see how fast the rate of change is being completed. As you can see, sometimes the actual line diverges from the planned line, but providing they meet together at the bottom, all is well. Also, there are activity boards. These are highly visible management of work tool, often used with post-it notes on the whiteboards, so they're easy to manage and easily changed, and of course very visible to the team involved. And stability of the system is achieved via continuous integration and automatic testing, perhaps even test-driven development approach. The rule during a sprint is do not break the code. And this is all supported by a solid configuration management of that code. Testing again. Now, testers are embedded in the Scrum team, and we have to stress the importance of this embedding. They're not just embedded within the team, but they're embedded in the sprint. So testing one sprint behind the developers does not work. They have to test the sprint the developers are working on. One of the key elements, of course, is regression testing, and this is added to during the sprints. And then, as various sprints progress, regression test gets larger. This helps to ensure the build is not broken. Testers also support any automatic testing tools, and of course, they also bring to the fore their skills in risk-based testing. The recommendation is to have more than one tester. So when they work with the product owner to ensure the understanding of the required features that they have to test, the two or more testers help ensure there's a shared understanding that minimizes incorrect assumptions. Working with the product owner, they can clarify requirements and create test cases together. These test cases can help inform the team of change, providing a baseline of the features for the delivery. Such changes as this are discussed in user stories and in the daily stand-ups. Now, Scrum encourages the team to stay focused on what and only what needs to be delivered in that iteration. Scrum supports this by rapid feedback cycles, allowing the team to learn what is needed, and they can change the delivery to meet the user's needs. Team is empowered to be self-organizing to create a solution. There are regular stop review points to confirm everyone's still on track. This is achieved by always focusing on building the delivery, as there's obviously not much time to do anything else in a 2-week sprint. Define done. This is defining the sprint exit criteria in advance. Define what is meant by done, for instance. This allows the team to clearly state when they are done or complete, and they will know exactly what this means and how this can be confirmed. For instance, they can use checklists so that the software is ready to deliver when, for example, code is completed using the best code in practice and checked into the configuration management system. Unit test scripts are written and run successfully, integration scripts likewise, and performance test complete. Also, supporting documentation is written. Now, large projects. As we've seen, Scrum is often described in the context of a single team. But there are also, in the real world, large projects where deliverables span several teams and therefore several sprints. Now, if we can do this, this allows the company to expand the places where Scrum can be deployed. So a couple of ways of handling this. There's 2 ways to spring to mind. One is in the classic Scrum world, a Scrum of Scrums. So for large projects, these Scrum of Scrums, or aka integration Scrums, are where representatives of each of the component Scrums come together to discuss various items. They can be functional Scrums, technical Scrums, or configuration management Scrums. Another way is to use a framework of sorts. Here is the Scaled Agile framework. This provides a framework for implementing Agile practices at enterprise level, and in there somewhere are actually various Scrum teams. This is not part of Scrum, but supports the Scrum itself. And of course, Scrums can be multi-site. Ideally, we stated before that these teams should be co-located, but the reality of business often means this is not possible. So there could be a single Scrum team working across multiple sites, or multiple Scrum teams working on different sites. The same approach is used for physically located teams for all of them. Various technologies and techniques can be used to support this. For instance, you can have particular project tools to help the teams work together, often supported by social networking tools as well to enable teams to get to know each other and work more cohesively. But even with all these tools and techniques, the key factors are the same as for their co-located agile teams, i.e. the social, collaborative aspects of it. In particular, trust, based on shared values and common goals, and open communication between teams. To recap, a lot of the underlying concepts of Scrum apply to other agile methods in general. The objective is to deliver the right outcomes to time and cost, being more responsive to changing requirements, and by valuing individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, and responding to change over processes and tools, comprehensive documentation, contract negotiation, or just following a plan. This improves communication, team cohesion, client relationships, and reduces waste by avoiding tasks which do not add value to the delivery, identifying mistakes earlier and therefore taking corrective measures, and only delivering those features needed by the business. Thank you very much for listening.